Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here because I'm in Greenville or Easley, Easley, right? Easley. And this is a great town to be in, right? Right. How many people would like to go to Fort Lauderdale, Florida and go to the beaches there? Just curious. The month of January and February, we get a lot of takers. Anyway, we see a lot of visitors come. Come visit us if you do come down in that area. Some of the things that I'm going to show you are in our museum. We actually have a creation museum in Fort Lauderdale area. You can check as you leave. Please check our table and we'll fill you in. Our website, creationstudies.org, creationstudies.org. You'll find everything there, including resources and all the things that I'm going to be talking about are going to be on that website. I'm excited to be here because God said that He created. And when He created, it was very clear that when God said 10 times, you see, God said, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And then in Genesis 1:3 we see, and God said, let there be light. And He said it 10 times, and God said, and God said, and God said. If God says something, and He says it not just once, but He says it 10 times, He means it. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. When you say something and you repeat yourself, you want to make sure you're heard. You know what I'm talking about. I mean, you go and you say, please, can I have this? And you really want it. Please, can I have it? Can I have it? Yeah, because you really want it. You repeat yourself. And sometimes moms and dads get a little aggravated. They say, okay. But you know what I mean by repeating yourself. It's important. And another thing He did in Genesis 1, He repeated Himself. And you know what He said? He said, everything is good. It is good. It is good. It is good. And so what I want to do with you right now is I want to show you how things are good. You see, I taught science for many, many years. And one thing I try to do is I try to encourage my students to look at the world and to have fun with it because we have an exciting Creator. If everything is good, then I would imagine that if everything is good, we have a creation that reflects Him. So one of the things I do is I love to play with dry ice. Now you got to be careful because dry ice can burn you. You see, this is, you ready for this? This is gas. Yeah, it is gas. And what happens is when you take this gas and you let it be exposed to air, you can see the gas comes out. But really what happened was that this gas was compressed under high temperature and so on. And so what happens, low temperatures and high pressure, and so what happens is that you wind up with, a solid gas. Now this is interesting. How could you have a gas that's a solid? Well, let me tell you, what you have to do is you have to put it in a laboratory and you have to work on it. But when you take it here, what happens, some interesting things occur. Watch. When you put it in water, look what happens. You can see that the water is bubbling, and as the water is bubbling, the gas called carbon dioxide is coming out, and is coming out as a gas. You see it? Watch. Here it is. I'd love to pour it. And you can see right off the bat that carbon dioxide is heavier than air. You see that? You can almost like drink it. Be careful. If you drink it too much, it kind of gets your mouth kind of acidy because carbon dioxide, when it goes in your mouth, can make it very acid. Now, because it's a gas, I'm going to have a little fun with you. And what I want to do is I want to make a little rocket. Is that all right? Now, folks, I'm going to get to the Ice Age creatures in a second. Okay? The reason why I'm up here is because I want to let you know about our ministry. Our ministry is a hands-on ministry. It's a Creation Studies Institute. It's one in which we dig up fossils, we do experiments, we get engaged in God's creation. And that's the focus of our ministry. And so I can't help it. When I do these kind of things, I have to bring bones, I have to bring a little experiments. So what I'm going to do is I need 3 volunteers. And they have to be brave. And they have to have steady hands. Okay, let me take you. Why don't you come up here? Okay. And all right, you hold this in your hand. And we got to give you your top. Here's the top. Okay, who else? I'm going to put this in here. Okay. No, don't cover it yet. Okay, let's see who else. All right, let's take this young man in the orange shirt. And let's see. How about that? What's your name with the blonde hair? Kim? Okay, come on up here. All right. Put your arms up and let me see. Let me see how steady you can be with your arms. Put them up. Okay, good, because I'm going to put some dry ice here. Hold this. Okay, you can hold it down. You can hold your hands down because you're going to hold it up and we're going to watch what's going to happen. Okay, hold this. Okay, now you're not scared, right? You're not scared of noises and things like that? Even if there's a little explosion, right? Huh? You're not scared. Okay, good. All right, let's put this over here. And let's put this over here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the tops on. You got your top near you? Okay. The count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's put our tops on. I want you to hold it up high. High in the air. And face the audience. Thank you. Okay. Okay. High, up in the air. Keep it straight. Okay. While they're doing that, here. Once you put your hand on the bottom here. So if it does go off, it won't take your hand. Okay, there you go. Okay. How do they look? I hope the experiment works. You got the cameras? Okay. While they're doing that. Whoa! Okay. Where'd the dry ice go? Still there? Good. All right. All right, let it hold it up. Keep holding it up. Okay, keep holding it up. You watching me? Can you see this? Can you see this? What's happened? Whoa! Can you see this? What's happening? Melting. Well, I don't know if you want to call it melting. I'll tell you what's happening. Let's do another one. Let's see what happens when I put another one in. Yes, you can put it down. How are you doing over there? Just be patient. You can sit down. Thank you very much. Give those a loud round of applause. Very good. You can have a seat. He'll be with you in a second. Keep it up. Now here's the secret. The reason why this works is because dry ice, I told you, dry ice, that ice I had, dry ice, is really not ice, it's gas. And so when the gas goes, when the dry ice, the solid, gets to gas, turns to gas, it actually causes, sure, an explosion. There you go. I need to be, whoa, what happened here? It's gone. Let's take a look and see what we've got. So I got to take my glove off here, and let's see what happens. How are you doing? Beginning to think there's no dry ice. I'm going to check it out in a second. Sometimes we do have these ones that don't work. Okay, you can be seated. Thank you. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take this here, and this is the styrofoam, ladies and gentlemen. Let's make it right in here. Now, there it is. Here's the styrofoam. This is 2 cups, and you see it right here. Let me get up on the stage so you can see it. There you go. See it? Styrofoam cup. He needs to get an award for this. We'll try it a few more minutes, and then we'll call it quits. What happens sometimes is the dry ice. He needs Moses. Remember Moses? He needs somebody to hold. No, we'll get that in a second. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is we have styrofoam. And styrofoam interacts with acetone. And what acetone does, it actually goes into the pores of this styrofoam. It dissolves it by reacting with it. And then when it reacts with it, the styrofoam completely dissolves, because guess what the styrofoam is? It's air. It's air. That's all it is. So whenever you have a styrofoam cup, it's mostly air, and this is the only thing left. Now I have to squeeze it, and it'll get smaller and smaller as I squeeze it, and it becomes very, very small. Now, you ready for this? There's a lesson to be told here. You know what you are? You're basically air. You're actually empty. Your atoms in your body have lots of space. You're made of atoms. Everybody is made of atoms. Everything is made of atoms. Anything I touch is made of atoms. We can't see them. We can't see them. There are things that God created that we cannot see, but here's the marvelous thing. Okay. Give him a round of applause. You can leave it on the table. We'll give you a reward for that. It'll go, folks. I don't know when. We'll just keep talking. As I was saying, that we are basically made of empty space because we are made of atoms. Atoms are lots of space. If you're made of atoms, then you're space. Then the question is, how come I can see you? Well, the reason why I can see you is because there's forces that keep those atoms together. Now, that's kind of hard to understand because when I talk about the invisible, you can't see it. But you know what God's done? You ready for this? He made the invisible visible. You know how he did it? By the forces that he created. Those forces are putting those atoms together so when they come together, boom, they come, boom, boom, boom. And before you know it, as they come together, they make you, they make everything in this universe. Isn't that amazing? Just like the styrofoam. Just like the styrofoam. Basically, that's what we are. We're lots of vacuum of space. So when God said, listen, I'm going to create the whole universe, he created things that are really made of nothing, but because of him, because of his forces, where it's able to be put together. Now, what I'm going to do with you today is I'm going to talk to you about lots of things. I want to talk about an ice age. I've got several little more experiments I want to do as I go through this, talk about the ice age. But because of the ministry and because what we do, I wanted to share with you a curriculum that we're putting together, just like what I'm doing here, all hands-on based. And we decided to do hands-on based because that's what God, I believe, wants us to do. You see, science should be what? Fun. Why should it be fun? Because we have an exciting creator. Isn't that a good philosophy? Right? I mean, I've done this for many years. I can tell you that you can teach science, and if you do it with hands-on, you're ready for this. You can really learn. You can learn higher skills. You know, they call it Bloom's taxonomy, where you have to really think. And the higher thinking skills are when you start doing things and you analyze these things. Do you know that Einstein had to do lots of hands-on activities so he could build his model? So we know about Einstein. Same thing here. And so we developed a curriculum that's hands-on, and this is the first of the series. There should be 9 books coming out. We have a textbook, full color. It's very affordable, $12.99, and we have the teacher guide and the student journal. Everything you need to have a course. This is 6 months here, and we're going to have 9 of them published. The next one is coming in the market very soon, and so I'd like you to take a look at them as you leave today. Also, as we talk about an ice age, I can't help but talk about a book called The Life in the Great Ice Age, written by Michael Ort's wife. Michael Frozen in Time has written that one. Excellent, to give us a real understanding of an ice age. And the thing I'm going to be talking about today, things I'm going to be talking about, are based on a lot of his theories. We look in terms of the other series that we have. For $35, you can get, there's 2 videos in that package, 2 books. And James Nienhuis, I've actually interviewed on the radio. And you know what? I hope I can get to it in our presentation. We believe the pyramids were built during the Ice Age. You hear that? Pyramids were built during the Ice Age. You know the Vikings, and they moved all around. We hear stories of Vikings and the ships. Yes, during the Ice Age. There are celestial maps of the whole world because it was done during the Ice Age. Very interesting. Now, we got to talk about the Ice Age, because there was an Ice Age. There was a time when everything was very, very cold, just like this dry ice. There are places on Earth that it was minus 109 degrees Fahrenheit. So I want to talk about that as we look at this. And what I want to do is focus on this. I want to focus on Noah's flood. I really do. Because if we're going to talk about mammoth bones, you see this mammoth bone over here? I'll have to pick it up. But this mammoth bone, this table is full of mammoth bones. I have mammoth bones on the left and mammoth bones on the right of me. They are big. And we're going to talk about mammoths. And that mammoths, we believe, are very significant of the Ice Age. And we're going to tie that in our conversation. But we believe that there was a worldwide flood, and we take a look at the earth today, we have a lot of water. Take a look at the globe, and as you look at the globe, you'll see, hey, I don't see too much land. I see a lot of water. A lot of that blue stuff. Where did that blue stuff come from? All you have to do is think, you know what? Maybe there could be a flood. I mean, there's so much water there. And so we see 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with water. So we see that. That's an observation we see. And then we say, where did all this stuff from? Where did the oceans come from? Where did the mountains come from? Where did the continents come from? The rock layers, the weather patterns. And lastly, where did the Ice Age come from? And the answer, I believe, has to do with Noah's flood. You see, we believe that during, in the time of history, that we had a flood. And the Bible records it. There are 3 chapters dedicated to that. Genesis 6 to 9. And so we know, how do I know there's a worldwide flood? Well, God talks about it. He really does. But you ready for this? That's what I love to do science. You see, God's creation, everything around us, magnifies His Word. His Word is never void. When God speaks, it's like it's amplified. It's everywhere in the universe. And I mean that. You see, God's Word is really exciting because when you talk about God's Word, we see many, many truths, particularly the one, in this case, about the fact that the earth came from Noah's flood. Now, we also observe something really weird. We observe that, hey, if Adam and Eve came into existence, they had to be mature. Now, think about it. God says, okay, I'm going to create Adam and Eve. Okay, so He puts a man and He puts a man on earth, and then from the rib He creates Eve. Now, what happens? He's got to live. Well, what's he going to eat? Well, you see, there had to be trees. And the trees had to be mature. Actually, everything was kind of mature. It was birds, and we had rocks, we had everything. As God created in the first week. He created maturity right in the beginning. And so we see that God created things that were very mature. I've got to get to this point because you have to understand something. When we talk about these big bones, we talk about giants walking the land. Here's a mammoth right here. I picked my little model here, and I'm going to hold him up so you can see him, because I love mammoths. See him? Now, the mammoth I'm going to be talking about in just a little bit was 17 foot tall. Now, how do you get here? Probably, maybe even bigger than that. How do you get here? Well, we have to talk about that, you see. It's important. So we're going to check these pre-flood conditions before the flood. We know that the sun never really came through because there was a canopy in Genesis chapter 1. In the second verse, the second day, it talks about this idea of this separation, and there's a water, kind of a water separating, and we have kind of an idea that there was an area called a canopy that protected us from the sun's rays. Now, you might say, well, why do you say that? Well, the reason being is that it talks about separation, but then when I observe the fossil record, I see that as I see fossils, I see them in big proportions. I see flowers. I see plenty of flowers. I see them very big when we do our fossils. I see all sorts of animals. I see, as I look at fossils, I see that there's even giantism. There's giantism in the fossil record. Now, we've got to talk. If Adam lived 930 years, how many birthdays would he have? How many birthday presents would he get? A lot. A lot. He would have so many presents. And how smart would he be? Who's smarter, you or your parents? Who's smarter, you or your teachers? Well, you know, The reason why we are smarter is because God has given us experience. Imagine if you had 900 years of experience. Well, you'd be pretty smart. But you have to think that things were different. We find in the fossil record, we find big vegetation. We find leaves very big. We find trees very big. And then we see people living long ages. Now, are you ready for this? If this guy walked around, did he live 50 years like today? Well, we're not sure. If Adam lived 930 years and lived under those conditions, could this guy walk around and live for much longer? And the question is possibly yes. I don't have any of my dinosaurs with me, but we know that dinosaurs were very large. Brachiosaurus, 4 stories tall. I mean, how could he live so long? And the only way we can conclude a beast so big is that, he had plenty of, room to grow, plenty of food to eat. And we go a little further, we know that reptiles tend to grow every year. So is it possible with these good conditions that this dinosaur, which Richard Owen classified as a reptile, could have continued to grow and grow over the years, and the same thing with this mammoth? Yes, we believe the vegetation was great, that there was a whole new thing. Now, when we look at the Bible, this is what we see. We look at the timeline. We believe that as we look at the Scripture, it says 6,000 years, and there's evidence to support it. It's magnified over and over again. If people say to you that the earth is millions of years old, what they're saying is that the earth was mature upon God's creation. There's no rock that has a date on it. No rock. You can't find a fossil that has a date on it, stamped a date. You don't see it. So it's man's interpretation. Follow me. Now, when you look at this, the Bible tells us that we are in a framework of 6,000 years. Now, if you look at the first 1,500 years, those are pre-flood. Post-flood was 2,500. Where's the Ice Age fit in? Right there. It lasted about 500 to 700 years. Now, why do I say that? Because the only way we could have an ice age and have these giant mammoths roaming around is because there had to be a worldwide flood. You hear that? And I'm going to show you as we go through this explanation why that has to be. So 700 years, we had this transition where the climate got cold. First 500 years. In the last 200 years, it got warm. Now, in South Carolina, it got cold. It was cold in the summer. You got to figure that we had an average decrease in temperature about 10 degrees. So it would be very cold today. In the winters, it'd be horrible. And your summers would still be kind of chilly. Because that's what happened. We can see this. How do we know? Well, there's evidence everywhere. We know that in the book of Job, Job tells us very specifically about a worldwide flood. He says, where were you when we laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched the measuring line across it? On what was its footing set on? Who laid its cornerstone? Job's telling us, hey, actually God is telling us. He's asking Job, where were you? Were you there? Job says, I could say, you weren't there either. But we know about this. We know that there are verses that tell us, it says in Job 37, 9, 10, it's believed that Job is one of the oldest books in the Bible. And look what it says, is out of the south cometh the whirlwind, and cold out of the north. By breath of God, frost is given, and the breath of waters is straitened. We go on. There's more verses in the Bible than Job particularly talks about that. When darkened by thawing ice and swollen with melting snow, it goes on. Job 38:22 says, have you entered the storehouses of the snow or seen the storehouses of hail? 29:30 says, from whose womb comes the ice? Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens? When the waters become hard as stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen. See, the Bible is telling us something. One of the oldest books is talking about the idea that, hey, it must have been cold, from Job's experience. You know him, right? Manny, Sid, and who's the other one? Diego. Who's the ugliest? The one that gets in trouble. Yeah. Well, I agree, because Sid's supposed to be a sloth, and he is not a sloth, because we're going to show you what a real sloth looks like. I got pictures, you see. I got pictures of models, because nobody has ever really seen a full sloth, but we've seen parts of them because we have seen them. You see them in the middle? He's supposed to be a sloth. Now, that's a sloth. That is a sloth. How tall is he? He's 2 stories tall. See? Look at him. He's eating some. Well, let's take a look. 6 tons. There you are on the right. There you are. Faces up. Hi, Mr. Sloth. You coming to my backyard today? You gonna eat some vegetables? Do you understand what we're saying, kids and adults and parents? See, giantism, if we had giantism before the flood, giantism followed after the flood. And so these creatures were very large. And I have testimony here. You're going to see the largest mammoth bones, one of the largest mammoth bones I've ever seen before, right here. These creatures were enormous. If they were in the zoo, you'd probably recognize them as being like elephants, but they would be looking a lot different. They look very muscular because they had very big bones. Now, we take a look here, we see this mountain. Now, why did it have wool? Well, we actually found the carcass. We found the backside of one, and we actually found carcass. We actually found the hair in South America. Now, they traveled in packs. They ate lots of vegetables. We know that. Thomas Jefferson, one of our presidents of the United States, he loved fossils. He's the one that said to Lewis and Clark, I want you to go and check our Louisiana Purchase. And Lewis and Clark had to go all the way across, up the Missouri River and all across the United States. A fabulous voyage. And they embarked, and they were looking at, Jefferson says, hey, I want you to see if you can find any giant sloths. And so that's what they had to do. And so we see that. We see the fact that as we look at sloths, we also see the fact that they have teeth. The teeth are so large that I have a tooth right here. Let me get it closer up so you can see it. There it is. Now, you come up close, you can see, look, this is a giant sloth's tooth. Check your teeth and see what you have here. You have, as you check your teeth, you see the fact that these teeth themselves are very, very large. They're so large that they continue to grow and grow and grow. They never stop. So in actuality, you have this kind of thing going on. You have this thing where you have these 2 teeth coming together, and literally these teeth could go through the head of the sloth. Now, the sloth I showed you eating vegetables or eating plants were 18 foot tall. And so these teeth lacked enamel. Because they lacked enamel, they can continue to grow and grow and grow. Now, I want to tell you something. The sloths that we have found, and we found as we dig fossils up, the sloths that we have found are not typical that you see today with the sloths that you see today. Because the sloths that you see today don't have these kind of teeth. And the teeth that we have seen as we dug them up look very much like rodents' teeth. Rodents' teeth like gerbils and mice. Yeah, and rats, they have big teeth. The teeth get larger and larger and larger, and they have to file their teeth down just like the sloth had to do. So he was pretty busy filing his teeth most of the time. If I wanted to meet a sloth, I'd probably be extremely careful because he had one of these things. This is a claw. This is a giant claw. Some of you are looking at this and saying, that looks like a nose picker. Get the idea wrong. No, that's wrong. That's a bad idea. This is a claw. Take a look. This is one of the. You can see there are 3 of them. The Aramithium had 3, and the Megatherium had 3, but we had one that had 4 of them, and they had very large claws. My daughter is standing there. Many years ago, we took some trips, and she's standing in front of a sloth, so you can see the size relative to a human being. This is at the Florida Museum of Natural History. Here he is standing in Daytona. If you go to Daytona Beach, they have a beautiful museum, and right there you can see the giant sloth standing up. As we take a look, you can see we have giant armadillos. And they walked around. Now, the sloth and the giant armadillo are fossils we find. We actually find fossils. And we have their scutes, their outside scutes. There's a giant armadillo we call a Glyptodon. And you can see he's got a funny-looking tail and he had some sort of defense mechanism. They were like Volkswagens. They were like Volkswagens. Oh, here comes an armadillo. Whoa, this big, coming up to you. You know, so you got to think big during the Ice Age, right after Noah's flood. Now, you know what happened during this time? Many of them became extinct because the food was not there. But we find many fossils in our area, in the area that I'm going to be talking about in Florida where we do our digging. If you see, this is the armor made of a thick scales, almost 2 inches thick. A scale, the scales are called scutes. And the scutes are, we find them all the time. I don't have any here to show you. When I get done with this presentation, feel free to come up here in an orderly manner and I'll let you touch these fossils and identify them for you. But we had these scutes. We have plenty of scutes. I didn't take any with me, as I said earlier, but they are very big. And they actually go around the shell, and that shell is enormous. And so you could see by the size of the scute, they're about 2 inches thick, that had to be a big, big creature. So you get the idea that these are very large. There's a collection of them, the collection of scutes, the outside shell. Now, of course, everybody likes a saber-toothed tiger. We actually have a model in our museum of him. And the reason why people are fascinated with him is because he had these unbelievable teeth. And everybody keeps talking about his teeth. See? You have 2 teeth there. There you go. I want some breakfast. How are you going to eat? You ever see a cat try to chew meat? If you have big canine teeth like cats and dogs do, it's hard for them to go like that. They usually go to the side and start eating. So guess what this canine did? I always wondered, how could he eat with those big teeth? He probably did a lot of side action. And this could cause some damage. You can take a look. These are the actual size of canine teeth. These are actual castings that were done with great care so that you can see them. Many of the bones that we're working with, we're going to make castings of them so that you can see them and I can carry them around because these bones are very expensive. And when you carry them around, they can deteriorate. So we make castings very easily. Now, you can say, there he is with his teeth. We found teeth on his lower jaw, and they were very large, about 4 feet in height. They could easily go to 400 pounds. So that's a nice-sized cat. There he is over there. And so you can see him. And this is in Florida where we found many of them. Now, how many people have seen Jaws or heard of Jaws, the movie Jaws? That is a scary movie. When my wife saw that movie, she never went back in it's hard for her to get back in the ocean. And I live in Florida where there are sharks. And I will tell you that Jaws is a fake because those great big whites that they were talking about don't exist anymore. But I propose to you that they did exist at one time. And the reason being is that what I have in front of me is in front of you, I have a fossil of a tooth. This is a giant megalodon tooth. And so Jaws is really talking about these megalodons they became extinct. This would be 50 foot in length, the size of this church, from where I'm at to the door. And so you get an idea how big this thing would have been. And every inch is about 10 feet. That's how they figure it out. Every inch is 10 feet. And so we can get an idea. That would be his mouth. So, no problem of swallowing little boats. That's a giant meg. And yes, they did exist. They became extinct. And remember the reason why. I talk to you always about giantism as after the flood and before the flood because at that time we had lots of vegetables, lots of things in our genetics. Genes were basically making giants at that time as we change. This is a fish that they supposedly found. And whenever they find things like this, I always question whether it's true or not. And there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think this is a thing. But I do believe in this. These are dugong. And the reason why I believe in this is because when we fossil hunt, wherever we go, we find their ribs continually. And so there it is. See, we have, this is like a manatee, but it's a little different. Its teeth are a little different, the tails are different, and so on, but very large creatures. We have woolly rhinos. We have giant, oh, by the way, this is I should tell you what this is. This is a rib of a dugong. And when we fossil them, we find ribs like this everywhere. We believe the Indians probably use this. Okay, they use it. They can use it as weapons. They can use it as a tool. Very heavy. And the reason why it's so heavy is because it was very dense bone. The manatees and the dugongs, when they went and they want to go down underneath the water, they're big animals. They got a lot of blubber. And so how do you float with blubber? But, how do you get down? Well, this is their weight belt. And by exercising the diaphragm, they literally go down, designed perfectly to go down. And what happened is that their bones are a little more dense, and when they fossilize, they seem to get really, really hard, and there's all sorts of, you can see microorganisms working the fossil in and out. We see this all the time. So there is evidence of the dugong. Now, there were giant beavers. Again, we see giantism. The Ice Age beaver was about the size of a black bear. 8.2 feet, weighed 440 pounds. So if we lived right after the flood, you would probably see all these great big creatures. There's a bison, very large. There's a camel. We believe there were funny-looking camels. There's a mastodon. He looks like an elephant, but he's not. If you said, okay, mastodon, I want you to open up your mouth, he would show you his teeth. And this would be his teeth right here. A lot different than let me put this down, be a lot different than a mammoth. Here's a mammoth's tooth, like Manny, woolly mammoths, Columbia mammoths, and here's a mastodon's tooth. See how different they are? Now this one ate branches, because he had teeth to do that. This one ate grass, because they're designed to do what they ought to do and do them well. Now, what we see is the mastodon could have 4 tusks. He's kind of weird. He could have 2 tusks or 4 tusks. Imagine saying, oh, there comes a 4-tusk mastodon. A lot different than the elephant we see. There's his teeth I just showed you. Now, here we go. See the ancestral mammoth right there? We believe that he is sitting on this table right here. Let me show you why. The ancestral mammoth, the largest mammoth, we believe is Columbian. They're all one kind, God's kind. This is his toe. How big are your toes? There's his phalange and there's the other phalange. See them? They go together. They articulate. So there's one toe. Okay? Here is his tibia. I'm going to hold this up and walk to the stand so you can see it. See that? The tibia is, I can't pick my leg up. The tibia is that bone. That bone there. Okay? Now you check your leg bone, your bottom leg bone from your knee down, and check this one out. Okay? Now I need your help. Guys, you want to help me for a second? I got to put this down. Okay. Come on here, guys. We got to pick up its femur. Here's his femur. Okay, guys. So you take the end, I'll take this one. Got it? Okay. Now, got to walk up on the stage with it. Okay. Sit him right about here. Okay. steady yet? There it is, guys. That is the femur. And we believe this is probably one of the largest mammoths that walked the earth. You ready? Okay, let's put it back. Got it. Okay. So we had these large mammoths walking the earth. And we have found that mammoths, okay, I'll spin around, literally can be found everywhere. Woolly mammoths, Columbian mammoths, all these mammoths. And that's why we believe something was happening. Those mammoths are telling us a story. They were moving. They were moving because it was getting cold. We found those guys in Florida. And that's where we found them. There's your Willie. You see him? He's small. He's only about 8 foot. You think Woolies are big? That's the big guy. Muscular. Strong. Now, this is an artist's rendition. We haven't seen a Columbian mammoth in its entirety, but we've seen woolly mammoths. We've actually seen them. And we have dug up mammoths. We've dug them up in the Peace River. You can see the bones to the left, bones to the right. These are the mammoth bones. We picked up some. These are all, they were all dug up as we dug up fossils in the Peace River. Now let me tell you something. You might say, well, why are you digging up fossils? I'm digging up fossils so I can show the world that God created them. We're digging up fossils so we can make the biblical perspective so that people would understand that these things came only because of a worldwide flood. These are a result of something very different. This backbone, this little vertebra, is probably, no elephant has a vertebra like this. This is one vertebra. If you take a look, you see, look at a hole in here. That is his spinal cord. That's how big the spinal cord was. That is a big animal. And so we know that these animals were very, very large. And they had to consume a lot of food. Now, you ready for this? When after the flood, God provided the land. Land was moist. The land was organic. There was good vegetation. And we can find lots of animals because the plants grew. And animals fed off them. So, contrary to what you might think, it was not desolate. We had lots of animals. So here we are. We're digging up this is the humerus. That's the upper part of the arm. You see right there is the mouth. The mouth is right there. Complete mouth. That's how we found it. Imagine if you were digging with me, and all of a sudden you found a little bone. You went a little further and you found, whoa, and it kept on getting bigger and bigger. That's what happened with this tusk. Am I right? This tusk is 6 foot. Greg Reuter was walking around, and the water was kind of low. Greg was with us on our tour. We do tours down the Peace River. And so Greg says, oh, look, I wonder what this thing is. And he dipped down, and he started to move the sand a little bit at a time, and before you know it, it got bigger and bigger. Then he just picked this thing up in his hands. Why? It was just laying there to be picked up. And there it is, a giant tusk from a mammoth that stood 12 feet. That's a juvenile. This and what you see behind you is a juvenile that was found in the Peace River in Florida. That's where we found a lot of these fossils. There's the femur. The femur is much smaller than that. This is over 17 foot tall. We know that. And by the way, homeschoolers came out to help us because when we found the mammoth, we had to get it dug up. And a lot of us had jobs to go to. So the homeschool families came by and helped us dig up the mammoths, and we did that very well. And then students, we have it at our museum so you can see it. Students got college credit. They continue to get college credit to work with us. I want you to take a look at this scene because this scene tells me something very special. If you look at this scene, you can see that you have this mammoth. You have rhinoceroses in back. You have buffalo. You see right next to it, you see a glyptodon. This is very typical of what could have happened in here, South Carolina, Florida, during the Ice Age. See, during the Ice Age, there was plenty of water in this area, going south all the way down to Florida. Plenty of water, great for vegetation. So these animals could survive. So they migrated from the north to here because it's believed that the climate was kind of even throughout the world. We found this in a fossil record. We find palm trees buried up north where it's supposed to be very cold. We have palm trees. So as we look at the fossil record, something happened. And we believe the Ice Age took place because of these animals. These animals give us a good picture. Now, this is an area what we call Bowen Valley in Florida. And this is what I'm talking about. When I see all these fossils, this is where we've been digging over the years since 1996. There's Bowen Valley. It starts either Florida, there's Florida. It actually dumps out at Charlotte Harbor in Point Aguirre. If you go by Florida and you're on the west coast, and there's the Peace River, and if you go up that Peace River, you're going to be surprised. There's so many fossils there. It's fossil beds. And you have them also in South Carolina. They call them where it's very easy to find fossils. Here's the Peace River. It completely twists and turns in Florida. And that's what we find with a lot of these rivers. They twist and turn because it's level ground. And so here it is again. And then if you, let's see, what would happen here is as this river kept twisting and turning, at one time, this was water. And what happened was when the Ice Age came, this is very important, when the Ice Age came, the water disappeared. Why did the water disappear? Because, ready for this, the water went up in the air. It was great for evaporation, and the water went up in the air and got caught up in the North and South Pole. Because we had plenty of rain here, the oceans were hot, and that's what took place. So the ocean started to recede. And in Florida, there's where the Bowen Valley is, and these are the areas where we find lots of fossils. You can do this in South Carolina. I actually have some pictures of South Carolina where there are fossil beds like this. Now, as the glaciers got warmer, we know that several things occurred. We know that as it got warmer, the water pushed things aside. It carved tremendous lakes. Like if you go up north near Canada, the Finger Lakes. There are big lakes carved because as the Ice Age started to warm up, the ice started to melt. And as it started to melt, it really had 2 miles of ice. Imagine going outside and saying, look, it snowed. But instead of 4 inches, you have 2 miles. Okay? What do you do when it melts? Well, it melted and it carved these 80 big 800 feet trenches, which we call the lakes, the Finger Lakes, up in New York. We also know that there was a mechanism for an ice age. In Genesis 7:11 it says, on the day all the springs of the great deep burst forth. And we look at that as the idea that this could have made an opportune time for the earth. When God had to pronounce judgment, it was a great time for the earth at this particular point to become unstable. And all you have to understand is that we have volcanoes, and volcanoes are made of energy, a lot of steam. Mount St. Helens, when it was equivalent to 430 million tons of TNT, or 33,000 atomic bombs going off in one day. We don't think of that. We talk about global warming. I'll tell you where global warming is. It's right here. You know how much carbon dioxide that emitted? I mean, seriously. And right now, if we look around, we see that there are over 1,500 active volcanoes, some on top, a lot of them down underneath, with 8 to 12 eruptions occurring at every given moment. So we know that it's very unstable. Imagine if you lived in the Philippines when Pinatubo exploded. This is a lady in 1991 walking around with an umbrella. Why does she have an umbrella? It's not raining, there's volcanic dust. See, when the volcano exploded, if you're near the volcano, all the volcanic dust comes down, and there's a village buried by volcano dust in the Philippines. Now, what happened is this. If you have a worldwide flood, and it covered everything, okay, then the waters dissipated, and now, after the flood, the animals were let go, and we started to populate the earth. The earth, at that particular point, the oceans were hot. Why? Because the volcanoes exploded, the great crevices moved apart, and before you, the canyons, deep canyons were made, and lots of energy was driven. They were driven by that energy. And what happened was the oceans became extremely hot. Now, if you have clouds, what happens when you have clouds? It gets what? It's cool, doesn't it? You have clouds in Florida, it cuts the sun away. And if we have cloud cover over the earth, volcanic dust, it would make the temperatures go down. And we believe that was the mechanism to cause the Ice Age. You see, all we have to do is make the average temperature go down by 10 degrees. And if we do that on land, guess what? We're going to have an Ice Age. And that could only have happened with a worldwide flood. That's why the Word of God is so important. And, you know, when we look at that, that makes perfectly good sense. I taught physics for many years, and I want to tell you, the idea of having something hot and something cold makes a great deal of sense. You see, when we talk about hot and cold, we have wind. And so if you have a hot ocean and you have a cold land because the volcanic dust is over you and keeping the land cool, you're going to have now, ready for this, you're going to have lots of rain. Lots of rain. And the people are going to get the rain up north. As the Earth starts to rotate on its axis, the poles get a little cooler because of the way it's bent. They start to get colder. And we get lots of rain. And that's why these animals, these giant animals, were migrating. They were eating all the plants and animals and so on. You have mammoths too in South Carolina. You have some of these large creatures there too. I know that. Because they were migrating. They were moving back and forth. And so this is a good mechanism. It's a great mechanism for having an ice age. You can't explain it without it. I mean, we know about hurricanes, and hurricanes basically work the same way. As the ocean gets hot, you have energy to make a hurricane. You take a look and you look at the El Nino effect, and I don't want to read this whole slide, but I'm going to summarize it. It basically disturbs all weather patterns. As soon as the ocean gets a little hot, weird things happen. Really weird things. And that's why you hear the people talk about global warming. Oh, we got to be careful because, you know, if the ocean basins continue to get hot, they're going to melt the glaciers and all this stuff. Well, my answer to that is they have to understand weather. Weather is basically, if you take a look at our weather patterns, we have the oceans, and the oceans really make our weather. They really do. And the oceans, you know about water. Water is an absorbent of heat. And so we can look at this. We have kind of a mechanism to check global warming. Because what happens is if it gets too hot, we have precipitation. That's what happened here during the Ice Age. Lots of precipitation. And so hurricanes are formed by that kind of thing. Now we believe that these hurricanes that were formed during this Ice Age were very, very powerful and very strong. Actually, the investigation is that we have found this mammoth, that mammoth, and this part goes to a third mammoth. 3 mammoths were buried at the same place. You follow me? At the same place. How did they die there? The only way we can attest to that is that there had to be a catastrophic event. And it's possible that one of these big hurricanes, I wouldn't say hyper hurricane, but I would say a big hurricane, took those animals and really, whether it be a spin-off, you have spin-off tornadoes, but what happened was we had a catastrophic event there, and that's how those animals disappeared. And we know about the Ice Age because we can trace it. We can trace the glaciers that were formed, and they leave marks, and they leave these, in geology, there are things that they leave behind, rock layers and so on. We have names for those. I don't want to get into that, but that's how we know that they did exist. And people, evolutionists, when I ask evolutionists, well, how many ice ages there are, they tell us we have lots of them. But we only have evidence of the last one. Why? Because they say the last one was the most powerful of all. So we look at that. Evolutionists say there are 60 theories now proposed. There's even more now. It keeps getting larger as time goes on. Evolutionists believe that the ice ages are cyclic. They regularly, 100,000 years, the past 800 have cycled from 100,000 years for the past 800,000 years. Presently, the most popular is the 30 glacier episodes. The last episode, the last late Wisconsin glacier period, was the greatest of all and has erased the evidence of the previous ones. It covered 1/3 of the Earth, 97% of Canada. The last glacier period was the one that we have most evidence. That's what we have evidence of. And so we don't have multiple ice ages. When you look at the evidence, it's very clear that we have one ice age as we look at this. So how many do we have? Well, you know, to us, it's just one. And we have, as you saw, there's overwhelming evidence for that. This is a chart showing the global warming, we did go through global warming in the ocean. And what happened was the ocean, as it gradually cooled off, it took 500 years to cool off, and then we went through a warming stage. And so these animals could have been through the warming stage as the weather patterns completely change. The Sahara Desert was not a desert. You hear that? Sahara Desert was not a desert during the Ice Age. It was green. And that's why we believe the pyramids could have been made. We know about the Tower of Babel. That happened, we believe, during the Ice Age, that these people separated and they moved about. We see that as we look at the Ice Age, we also see the fact that they had tremendous land bridges for migration of both people and animals. Because as these glaciers moved apart and moved out, these snow beds of snow and became ice, they during the Ice Age, they started to really spread out, creating areas where you could literally go from one place to another place because the ocean dissipated, just disappeared. Imagine that, an ocean disappearing. Then you look at this, and you look at over 100 skeletons of Neanderthals men have been found in the caves of Europe, Western Asia, and North of Africa. Their skeletons from the neck down are almost identical to modern man. Neanderthal man had brow ridges like a chin, the back of his head extended backwards. We believe that Neanderthal, that they call Neanderthal, I believe is a modern man, existed during this time, and that's why we're finding a lot of fossils, that they retreated to caves. And then, of course, we have proof that man existed during the Ice Age. You know what happens with the ocean? We all love the ocean. We all like to put our boats in the water and go for a swim. Well, when you have no more ocean, let's say the ocean starts to move away, what does man do? Well, he says, well, there's the ocean. It was over here now. Oh, it's down the road. Well, you know what? 50 years go by, it's now going, you know what, let's go build a house over there. It'd be pretty safe. And they build houses. They actually build these monoliths, these buildings, and these buildings actually are found underneath the water. Ninhaus has done research, and the videos portray this. You can actually see these megaliths underneath the water, and you can see that they're identical to the ones on land. So what we see is that man was migrating towards the ocean. As the ocean was moving away, depleting during the Ice Age, don't forget the water was going into ice in North and South Pole, people started to move. And the crust of the earth, so to say, the idea of the continents became larger. And we see the pyramids. And the pyramids were built, and we see that somewhere along the line, the pyramids had to be built by measuring the prime meridian. Now why? Because the pyramids if you take a look at a pyramid, it's perfectly built. So people had to understand how to do that. And the only way you could do it is that you had to have technology to do it. So we believe that during that time, because during the Ice Age, that area was full of vegetation in the desert, and we believe that they had celestial crosses, a Celtic cross. And that Celtic cross you can ever navigate. You can actually use it to navigate. You can aim it like this. We found it. There are records of this everywhere. You can find it. And you could actually build a pyramid using it by lining the stars up, and they could actually calculate where the prime meridian was. And then they used it for building purposes. Hey, this was unbelievable. These finds show us that man wasn't so stupid after all. These Neanderthals that we were finding were really men, and they were pretty intelligent men, because these men could build pyramids, couldn't they? We go up, we see the fact that there's Stonehenge, and we see Seahenge, and we see all this. And the only way we can devise this is that men had fairly good intelligence. We believe it during the Ice Age. Cave paintings of Ice Age extinct animals, these are very possible because they occurred probably, as we look at the Ice Age, as the men were migrating into the caves because it got very cold. This is where it took place. So we see, here's the pyramids in Giza. Was one of the city of the great activity, and you can see total block stone is 2,300,000. There are 2,300,000 block stones building that pyramid. Average weight of an individual block is 2.5 tons. The large block used for the ceiling of the king's chamber. The weight of the large stone was 9 tons. So how did you move 2.5 tons of rock around? The only way you can do it is with civilization. And hence, that's where I come from, New York City. And the reason why I come from New York City is because I was born there. And I was raised there. But I want to tell you, New York City, we had the best museum, American Museum of Natural History, all these monoliths, the Empire State Building. You see, where there's people, there's buildings. Follow me. Where there's people, there's pyramids. So I believe that they got that all wrong, and that's why we see the buildings today. There's New York, and we see it right here. As I end today, I'm going to do one more experiment. I want to tell you that the opportunity is yours. We do fossil hunt every year in the spring, and if you want to come down Florida and join us, feel free to do so. This is the area we fossil hunt. We've taken over 12,000 people. You can see the river is low. We sift, we fossil, and you keep your fossils. You learn how to identify them. You make the correlation to the ice age. You see that. And then as we look at this, we see that we interact. We have families. It's basically set up for families. And we're going to have one in the spring of 2009. I'm excited when I see these things. I'm excited because God is the creator. When you find these big bones, somebody said, well, what happens when you find a big bone? What happens when you find a big shark's tooth like this? And you're in the river and you're sifting and you dig something up like this. What do? Well, it's funny. As soon as you find something like this, all of a sudden you see 100 people come around you and they dig in the same area because they're looking for the same thing. They want one of these. And it's just like fishing. It gets very, very exciting. But you know, when we dig fossils, we make sure that we understand that God created them. And He's an exciting God. And I'd like to just share something with you that's part of my heart. And that is, you know, no matter what we do, no matter where we go, God is the center. And so what I want to show you is I want to show you two things that never mix. You never mix water with oil. They don't like to mix. Sorry, folks. There you go. So they have trouble mixing. I put the oil there, and notice what's on top, what's on the bottom. They don't mix. There's a layer over here and there's a layer over here. So what I generally do to see what's on top is I take some red dye, and it works every time. Get up on the stage so you can see this. You take the red dye, and you go like this. Put the red dye in there. And you see the red dye it's kind of floating around, but doesn't mix. But when you start shaking it around a little bit, and you're going to see, once you shake it around a little, let me put a little more in there. It'll eventually reach the bottom. Stay there. Well, I'm going to make it mix. I have to give it a good shake. Let's see if I can do it this way. There you go. Now you can see it mixed. Now you see we have two layers right before your eyes. We have two layers like this. Now there's a way we can get these layers together. And the way you can get these together is, you see, is that you need an intermediary, you need somebody who can make that connection. An intercessor, kind of. And when I look at this, I kind of think of Jesus. Why? What do you think of Jesus? See, I see that there's sin in the world, and I see that there's good. Good and sin never mix. You follow? So we will never get to heaven because we can't mix. See, our sin, because we're born like we are, we're man, and we're born in sin, we'll never mix with the goodness of God because that's the way it is. The only way it'll mix is if you use soap, and in this case, it's Jesus Christ's blood. And then it'll mix. You see. You see, it looks like a smoothie. It mixes. Now, Jesus Christ has provided the way for us. He's given us His grace. That's what that's about. I now am covered with His blessing. Like soap, I've been cleaned because of Him. And so, when we do these things, no matter what we touch or what we do, we understand that it's the grace of God that we operate under. And the whole idea of the conference, as we're going to be talking about this tonight, is to let you see the grace of God work. Because the grace of God is upon us, and we can really talk about Jesus and talk about His creation. And unfortunately, we're not talking enough. Because I really believe we need to be talking a lot more. Because we have so many treasures that people need to hear about. And when we look at things around us, we see an infinite God who's designed everything. And there's a God, a creator, that put the chemicals together, that put the bones together, that whatever we touch will magnify Him. And that's the reason why I'm here before you. I don't believe in evolution. You know why I don't believe in evolution? Because it doesn't make any sense. How could something come out of nothing? You follow me? And that something organize itself. I mean, that is ridiculous. That's what my mother told me. When I came back from college as an evolutionist and said, Mom, I'm an evolutionist now. I learned biology. The teacher told me I'm evolved. The professor told me I'm evolved. And I said, Mom, I come from a monkey. And she looked at me and she said, Son, that is stupid. And she was right. It took me 20 years to come and tell her that she was right. You see, because when God reclaimed me with His blood, a new light went around, and I realized how ridiculous that theory was. The fact that God is the architect. He's the one that tells us about. I want to tell you something. The Ice Age can only be explained by understanding God's grace and understanding what He said to us. The Word of God is magnified wherever we go by His creation. And that's what we see all the time. So when I dig up these fossils, or when we do experiments, wherever we go, we see this overwhelmingly. So tonight, as we're going to get into this deeper, especially for the adults, we're going to be talking about the idea of Darwinism and the fact that Darwin really, his theory is foolishness. The fact that his theory itself is probably not his. Lots of things we're going to talk about. The consequences of his theory, the wrong science, because we really need to know this as Christians. Because we speak, God's called us to have a reason for the hope that we have within us, doesn't He? So we invite you tonight to come and join us and be with us. And as I conclude, I want to remind you of the bucket. We're going to have put the bucket in the back. That's what we're going to do. Put the bucket in the back. Please, I've traveled far. So has Creation Ministries International Creation Study Group has done a lot of work, and we appreciate whatever you can do to help our ministries move forward.